Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee, and I'd like to welcome our new members as well to this committee. I hope you enjoy your time on it. I'm your chair, as you all know, Councillor Rachel Carnack, and the role of this committee is to scrutinise performance and take a closer look at topics of interest across the Council's services, making recommendations to Cabinet where necessary. This committee also deals with the call-in of Cabinet decisions and decides whether these decisions should be referred back to the decision maker to think again. Also present as a guest this evening, we have Councillor Alan Baldock, the leader of the Council, who has responsibility for car park pricing. He's been invited to answer questions about specific issues under his portfolio area and linked with his this evening's parking and transport report. Unfortunately, Councillor Mel Dawkins, who recently became portfolio holder for a number of transport-related areas, including bus and transport strategies, is unable to join us due to a prior engagement, and she gives her profuse apologies. And if there is anything that anyone wants to know, then she's happy to try and answer those questions afterwards. Just on some housekeeping, there's no fire alarm planned for this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave by the nearest available emergency exit. Two of the closest exits are through the glass door to my left and through the double doors onto the riverside behind you. Please meet at Tower House car park. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of the meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. I would also like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being minuted and filmed and made available to view in live and archive form via the Council's website. If you are seated in the public gallery, there's only Graham. It is possible that the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it is recommended you make a member of staff aware who can direct you to where to sit. And finally, the Westgate garden gates on the riverside are locked at sunset, so members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit behind the glass door. Right, okay, so with all that done, Andrea, are there any apologies?
We have an apology for absence from Councillor Dan Watkins and an apology for lateness from Councillor Alex Ricketts.
Okay, and any substitutes?
We have Councillor Liz Harvey here as a substitute for Councillor Watkins.
Thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest by members or officers? Marie.
Thank you, Chair. Just to declare that I'm a director on the Canenco board.
Okay.
Thank you.
And yes, Councillor Prentice.
Just to declare I'm an employee of Network Rail.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, if anything pops up as we go along, you can just mention it then. Right, okay, so we have one public speaker this evening registered for the meeting who will be called at the start of the relevant item. And on that note, would anyone mind if we change the items around this evening so that we have levelling up fund first and transport second? Is everyone all okay with that? Yes. Okay. So we will start with levelling up fund wrap-up report first item then. Before that, we have the minutes of the meeting held on 4th of March 2026 to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of March by general assent. Thank you. But before we do that, I just want to say, while we can agree the minutes, I don't think there are any inaccuracies in them. I would just like to note that this was the water meeting, and there are a number of outstanding actions for both South East Water and Southern Water. And I think given the incidents last week, we really need to just note that that this isn't the end of it. These minutes don't get signed off and that's a finish. So this is something very much live and that we're all very interested in and will be pursuing. And we also have the stakeholder motion that was brought a few councils ago that we're awaiting on that. So just if we can note that, please. But do we have general assent otherwise? Thank you. Okay. Yes, Councillor.
Sorry to break into the run of the meeting, as it were, but just something I'd like to get minuted, and that's to congratulate you, Chair, on your company Metal Events Limited, which you founded with your business partner George Fitzgibbon, on being recently awarded the King's Award for Enterprise. This Herne Bay company has built a reputation at international level, organising conferences for the metals industry on rare earths and specialty minor metals, a highly critical area these days for industrial development. This award shows the drive and imagination which she also brings to her work as a councillor. Members of the public should note that we are very lucky on this council to have a relatively young and engaged group of councillors. Unlike old retired duffers like me, many have jobs, businesses, careers, as well as caring for and bringing up families. Yet they still find time to do the best they can for their local community. So I congratulate Rachel on the King's Award and hope that it brings her further success. And I thank her and my colleagues for the work they do on our behalf, despite everything they have to contend with in life. Thank you, Rachel.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Mellish, and thank you everyone very much. That's a surprise, and yeah, thank you all very much. That's very kind of you, and I am indeed extremely proud to have won the award. And yeah, I hope if I can use it in my councillor roles, then I will do. Thank you. Right, okay. Now back to council work. So our first item, so item 7 is going first, and we're looking at the Levelling Up Fund wrap-up report. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be here for the bank holiday weekend, but I know that it went really, really well, and you had the weather on your side, Caroline, and it looked, from all the photos and the coverage, it looked absolutely amazing. So having been involved in the Levelling Up project, I think from the very kernel of an idea there with our previous leader, Ben Fitter-Harding, it's really good to be at this point now where we're wrapping it up. So welcome, and I'd like to call Graham Harrison, who is going to speak, and our presenting officer is Caroline Marlowe, who's Head of Digital Data and Improvement. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Actually, you just mentioned the gates being locked. That's part of what I want to talk about. The Greyfriars Garden, some members will probably remember I raised this at a meeting last year and said that some of the Greyfriars work couldn't be done until you'd received planning permission. And I thought, well, when it goes to planning committee, I shall speak there. It says on page 36 of your agenda tonight that planning permission has been achieved. First question, who gave permission? Because if it's a planning application from the council, why didn't it go to planning committee? I think there are 2 members of the planning committee here. Is it necessary for all council applications to go to committee? And if it is, why didn't this run? Well, one of the things I would have said at planning committee was what I did mention here. When the planning permission was given for the tannery, there was supposed to be an open gateway along the riverbank. Now that well, actually last week I found the gates were locked, which I can go up to the new bridge, but there used to be signs on all the entrances, gates shut at 4 o'clock at Christmas and 9 o'clock at sunset in the summer. But the sun sets at the moment about 9, but last week the Greyfriars Garden was actually locked before 8 o'clock. But there's nothing on any of the entrances to say now what time they're going to be locked. So I think there's a number of points there that members might like to think about, whether it involves planning committee or justice committee. I think that's, before, I was given a list of all the times when the gates are open. The Canterbury panel members would have seen it. That'd be of use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison, very much for that. I'm sure we'll be able to find out for you on the planning. And I have seen as well concerns about the closure of the Greyfriars gates and people trying to get through them and not knowing that they were closed. Councillor Prentice, did you want to say something just before Caroline speaks, or did you want to wait?
I can wait until after Caroline's spoken.
Okay, all right. So, Caroline, if you'd like to give your report, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Oh gosh, that's an old photograph. Been here too long. Oh, can't look at that. And on the note of having been here too long, I won't go into the report in particular detail because I'm sure that members will have had the chance to look at it, and if there are questions, I can absolutely do my best to respond to those. I would say that we are, I'm going to say 96% done now. In terms of the volume of projects within the programme, and the outstanding items, with the exception of the castle grounds and walkway, are all looking to be completed within this month, within June. The installation of the totems sort of the first week of July. So we are really, really close to being done now, and are in the region of 300 procurements that we've made over the life of the project. They're all done. They're all kind of making their way through to the end. So we're really in a period now of kind of handover, and it's the really boring stuff, the kind of dotting I's and crossing T's and making sure that the legacy of the project, is kind of captured and carried forward, even more importantly now with, where we are in terms of kind of heading towards unitarisation. So making sure that we have the design briefs locked in and the schemas, and making sure that we know where things are. And as I was talking to Councillor Baldock earlier, exactly which materials we're using for what and where we can get those from. So we're making sure that, we kind of, as we have done throughout the project, really doing, really paying attention and to the detail on it. But as Councillor Carnac alluded to, this has been, for those of us that have been here, this is my 21st year at Canterbury City Council, and this project has taken up 5 of them. And it was incredibly hard to negotiate what would and wouldn't be in the bid. It was incredible when we won it. I was kind of, I was okay, now we actually have to do this thing. And, yes, there are a couple of risks still. There are a couple of challenges insofar as the bat, the singular bat that has taken up occupation within the castle keep, may yet still cost us, tens of thousands of pounds. However, we do have contingency. We've held on to our contingency throughout. We have, we're still, have a high degree of confidence that we're going to come in on budget. We're not going to have to give any money back to government. Yes, we are, for argument's sake, sort of 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks over, but I would say in the life of 5 years, I'm gonna call that a success. And we haven't had to change tack at any point, and we had a few guiding principles at the beginning, and they're a bit cheesy. And honestly, I did actually stand up and say this at staff conference, as officers will attest, last year, I think, that we have tried to do this project with integrity from the start. And if we were going for jobs worth doing, it's worth doing well, as my nana would have said. So we've really stuck with that, and we have gone for quality, even if it's meant it's taken a bit longer, or we've had to switch suppliers, but, within those kind of 300 odd procurements, we've truly only had 1 or 2 where we've had to kind of switch lanes or make adjustments. And as so kind of here we are, really. We're very, very close to the end. We've been to every scrutiny committee for the last 2 or 3 years as well, myself and my colleagues. And it's nice to be able to kind of come along and sort of say, you know, we're basically there. And yes, the unlocked celebrations were, I don't disagree, a bit too hot. It's quite difficult to stay hydrated, and I hadn't quite understood that we'd built a square that was going to be like in the gaze, the beam of the sun. So, but it was a great day. We had lots of feedback. I suppose the last thing I would say, however, is, and people have said some very nasty things about us, you know, during the course of the programme. But I did laugh, and I said to Leo the other day, honestly, we may as well have spent £22 million on wildflowers, because they seem to be absolutely the kind of take home of the project. But you know, the kind of the green aspirations, as well as the heritage aspirations, as well as you know, everything that we committed to, we've managed to kind of come through on them. So, you know, I'm being a little bit cheesy, I suppose, again, but very happy to answer any actual practical questions. But I just wanted to say thank you to this committee as well for holding us to account throughout the life of the project. And always happy to come back if there are additional questions or anything, and perhaps it might be appropriate when, you know, we've done the final returns and stuff like that. But for now, this is you know, the wrap up of the LUF project, as was. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And I do think that it would be good to come back again in the future with the final. And I also think one of the key things with this project is longevity and maintenance, and making sure that it looks great for years to come. And that's going to be obviously difficult with moving into the unitary and different priorities maybe. But I think that's something that, yes, just does need to be revisited by scrutiny, that it doesn't slide again, that we keep Canterbury looking the way it's looking, and carry on with more projects as well. So thank you. So I know I have Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. And I've just want to thank Caroline and all of the officers for all of their hard work over recent years on the Levelling Up projects. It's, you know, being at the event the weekend before last was just stunning, and it was a joy to attend. Something on my doorstep that really was well executed, obviously blessed by fantastic weather. One thing that we were part of towards the end of the day, my partner was interviewed by a market researcher, where I think he was interviewed by an organisation called Spire, am I right? The guy was gave glowing reviews on Canterbury. He absolutely loved Canterbury, and wished he lived here. And I'm just wondering when that research would be published, because I'm assuming that was very much sort of to coincide with the festival. Obviously, you know, I'm sure people who visited Canterbury don't think we do that sort of thing every weekend. Wouldn't it be great if we did? But it really did show the city in its best light, and I'd love to see the results of that research, because I think it's a template for how we can do things, not just in the city, but in the rest of the district. If that's the standard at which we are doing things, and okay, I'm sure the funding for that came from the Levelling Up programme as a whole. I'll just be, you know, I'm not sure how much of that came from that budget, but yeah, it'd just be interesting to know when we can see the results of some of that research.
Thank you. It was indeed funded by the Levelling Up project, and we have myriad outputs around, you know, as you'd expect, on the return on investment and the footfall and what have we done and who's changed their behaviours because of those interventions. However, it is something that we have done as an authority for years, off and on, because you know, back when I was in tourism or heading up the culture service, whatever it might have been, you always had to sing for your supper. There's non-statutory services. You had to really illustrate that they had that value and they did have the economic impact or what have you. So yes, that, and we have a kind of, as you'll be very aware, a kind of re-emerging economic development function. And I know that that type of primary research is absolutely fundamental to kind of what we're doing. So there are a number of data sets, and then in correlation with stuff like the bid do as well, we can draw lots of conclusions sort of around that, visitor economy surveys. So yes, we paid for this one, and yes, it will be, I think it's available at the end of the project, but as soon as it is, I'm very happy to share that. But you can use, there are a number of data sets that we can use to kind of build a broader picture in terms of that ROI. And my other point has completely escaped me, but yeah, that's absolutely fine. We've got lots of that kind of data available. And sorry, there you go. And it was also about proof of concept. So does this actually work as an event space, and how people found it? So it was designed to do a number of things. Economic return, but also customer satisfaction feedback. But yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Campbell, and then
Thank you. Echo Councillor Prentice's thanks, Caroline, for you and the team for all you've delivered here. I've got two questions, if I may. One's on finance, and this may have been to a previous scrutiny, and so I've just not been around for the question. But in the table in section 2, it includes the match funding of about a total budget of 3 million against the total grant funding of 19.9. Is that in line with expectations when the project was started? Was match funding expected to be that level, or is it higher or lower? Where are we compared to where we started? And shall I ask the second question? Actually, no, carry on with that. I'll come back.
Yes. it was 10% is often sort of standard, and it was in that region. So it was actually 19.1 and 2. Some of that money was yours, Rich, I think. So yes, it has absolutely been kept in. That was in order to kind of meet the eligibility criteria. They wouldn't just give us money without kind of a contribution. But yes, that's absolutely kind of stayed in step with what we expected.
Thank you. The second question on funding is, again, this may have come up before, but are the operational costs, maintenance costs of the council affected as a result of spending 20 million of capital costs? So, for example, does this uplift or downshift our ongoing costs?
Yes. So there are some areas, and you'd have to forgive me, I don't know the detail of all the different budget lines, although they do exist. There are some areas where there has just been an outright uplift, as you might expect, around kind of grounds maintenance sort of budgets and cleansing. But it's not N+1. We haven't just gone, we've done everything we used to do, and now we've added this on top. So, for example, I know that they've looked under the Kanenko, kind of the GMOR contract again. Well, actually, where we've, pardon the pun, changed the landscape to a certain extent, these areas now need perhaps less frequent mowing. Let's take the wildflowers as an example, and therefore we can move things around. We can rob Peter to pay Paul. So there is an uplift in certain areas, but there's also a redistribution in others. So all of the plants we put in are drought tolerant and hardy and those sorts of things. We have made some adjustments to planting intentions where we've gone, actually, we found a bunch of burial vaults, so it turns out you can't put trees in those, so now we need to adjust things and put in planters, but actually planters aren't really going to work because they're too thirsty. So we've tried to kind of, it's a long answer, sorry I do this, we've tried to eke out and prevent nasty surprises in terms of our ongoing maintenance. That's been a real fun, one of those principles I talked about. We don't want to sting ourselves in the feet by the time we get to the end of it and we can't afford it. So we've been quite mindful of that. So the brief answer is yes, but they haven't all entirely bottomed out yet. We don't know. We know there's a bit here and a bit there. It's not a scary, significant figure in that sense. We've been really careful about the materials, I say, we've used. But there will be slight increases in some areas, but it has absolutely been something that we've been super aware of since the beginning of the project.
Thank you. So my last question, well, it's not really a question, it's really echoing what the chair said about I know the report says that there's no intention of coming back to scrutiny, but I think even though you're 97%, there's actually quite a long list of things that are outstanding. I think it'd be good either we come back to scrutiny or report to all scrutiny members saying the final outturn costs, the elimination of all risks, any scope additional to the original. So if you like, scope over time. And if you could also include on that, perhaps impact on operational costs once those have been established. I think, does that sound right, Chair?
Yeah, I think it's going toward it now, isn't it? Mainly, but I do think if we could have a final, whenever that is, if that's in 6 months, 8 months, a year, or whatever that is, it would be really useful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll come and talk about this any day. The castle won't be finished for another year and a bit, we expect, because of the bat. So the installation we're expecting to have very long, complicated reasons to do with cantilevering. But we expect an installation to start in May and take about 3 months. But there are, again, still some unknowns. So we've kind of long led that into September next year. So, but yes, we'll happily come back if that's the request.
Okay, so sometime, and Marie.
Just a suggestion, Chair, because this was the final report. The next stage is audit.
Yeah.
Maybe if the audit report is shared with this committee for information, rather than scheduling it to come back and it impacting your rolling timetable.
Yeah. No, that's fine. If that comes back, if the audit report, then yeah, I think that's good.
Thank
And
you.
then if we have any questions, we can raise those questions and they can go back anyway. Yeah, so that's fine. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly hear at the moment that people are deliberately coming to Canterbury to drive around the ring road, and they're quite happy being stuck on it for quite a while because the view's quite nice, which is encouraging, I suppose. But a lot of people do talk to me about how wonderful the flowers look, but also tell me how very, very difficult it is to make them come back next year. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the maintenance of that. It's not just a simple matter of cutting them back and hoping they're going to grow again. And can you also tell us a bit more about the Castle Keep and what the plans are for that when it is open? So is it just going to be you can go in there when you like? Are we looking at partners to help run it, events and that sort of thing?
Stretching the boundaries of my knowledge here. So horticulturally, yes. So a couple of things really on that. We are aware that it isn't, that it's more complex than it might seem. Again, just to echo what I said in my kind of previous response. We've taken a lot of advice on that. Kanenko have been looking at their in-house expertise. So rather than you having, perhaps the traditional staff that would be out there, also looking up, upskilling. We are under contract still, our contractors for a year. So with all of our kind of green spaces, if a tree dies in the first year, they have to come and fix it. We've got a kind of good handover year. We're able to learn from HTA or Blake Downs or whichever one it is to kind of, any information or knowledge that we need. And the Luff Fund has also purchased some specialist equipment for Kanenko to sort of look after those things. So again, I am hopeful that we've thought of everything. Probably haven't, there's so much. But yes, we're very mindful of that. So there's a number of things that we're putting in play there between us and Kanenko to sort of make sure that doesn't fall between the cracks. That was I hope answers the wildflowers question, very cognizant of that. And I've completely forgotten your second question, which is the castle. So the plans are, we are going to be reopening the grounds in the autumn, July, it depends. We are having an external moat. So one of the things that the castle's been one of the most complicated elements of the project, as you might expect. It's the whole programme has been a kind of statutory body's top trumps. So we don't have much authority. We don't own all the sites. And you've got Historic England versus the Highways Authority, So we've just kind of usefully had fantastic relationships with those bodies. But it's an entirely non-dig site, so you can't dig anything. So we were hoping to reinstate a little moat. How lovely. Nope. So we're having we're having kind of convex moat, so sort of a kind of mound, a subtle mound that you can sit on, which will follow the kind of moat site where it would have been originally. I'm not an expert in these things. We're having interpretation panels. We're having story garden totems. Those are great, actually. I'm really excited about those, and they're coming in the next few weeks. We're having augmented reality binoculars. All of those things are free. All of those things will be open from the autumn. People will be able to access the site for the first time since 2017, and it's all very safe. So that's kind of immediate return. We'll have to close it again to install the walkway. And I'm sure you'll have all seen the plans because they've been out in the papers again this week, but they're very cool. And you can fit a whole class of children on the top panel. So there's going to be lots of opportunities there. In terms of how it's going to be managed, again, it's going to be locked, kind of and unlocked by Kinenko. There are lots of things at play. I would say it's probably fair to say it hasn't entirely been bottomed out yet. That we can't do many events in there. Certainly of an evening because of the bats. You can't have any lighting pointing towards the structure. That was a bit of a disappointment personally because I thought it would look very nice. We can't do any of those things. So we have to be mindful of what we can do kind of within the sort of physicality of the grounds. But I understand, again, we're in this process of handover now. So all of the kind of various heads of services within the council are kind of asset owners of different things. And I know that the Culture, Leisure and External Development team are looking at the educational offer that they will be able to put on there, that they'll be able to work with local schools to put on there, and potentially, but probably more secondarily, sort of some event usage. And then I think there's going to be consultation again with the events industry locally to see what they think they could do. But it's so many of our sites have been primarily about, event spaces, as we've seen this weekend. And this one is probably going to be more used for kind of leisure, educational purposes with events as they will fit. But we have to be mindful, as we know, of that ecology. So we don't know yet entirely, and there's absolutely opportunity to kind of contribute to that. And we've got the Friends of the Castle who've been really supportive, lots of interest groups there. So we're kind of the guardians of it rather than massively curating or programming it, I would say.
Thank you, Caroline. Are there any final questions? Yes, Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. Just on Greyfriars Gardens, I admit I should have raised that with the head of planning earlier when I had my regular catch up with him. I suspect that was a delegated decision, but I will make a point of going back to Simon and just checking what the answer was to Mr. Harrison's question, because it's the sort of thing I probably would have expected to come to committee, but there may be a reason why it didn't. And yeah, I think Councillor Sowell asked my question about the castle, so that's great. I think the only final thing I would say is whatever revenue streams we've got with the new sites and the restored sites that we've got, it'd be great to sort of make the most of those in as sort of a tasteful way as possible, really, because as we can see, they really do bring people into the city. Yeah, I would just like to make the most of it in the years to come.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, on that note, if we can answer Mr. Harrison's questions, that would be great. And is there anything now that you can tell us about the closing of Greyfriars and signage and anything else? Or
On the planning note, I thought it had gone to committee, but I must confess, I was just told, fantastic, we've got planning permission today. And I didn't really question that because planning permission was what we were waiting for in order to get Studio Hardy in and it had been a bit of one of those risk factors for us, but absolutely I can find out. The locking and unlocking, as I understand it, is supposed to be under the same regime already with everything else. But again, I can follow up with that. And the only thing I would say about the signage is those are some of the last bits that we do need to go back in and replace things, because lots of signage was taken out for decluttering. So we are doing these final sweeps, and it may just be that we haven't yet, but we've got some other statutory signage that we're conscious that we need to put back in certain places. So I would just have to find out all the answers to those things, but I'm aware, follow them up.
Okay, thank you. And then presume Councillor Prentice, you can let Mr Harrison know as well then. Thank you. Right, well, on that note, thank you very much, Caroline, and thank you for your update today. And let's hope it goes well with the castle and that it continues for many years to look as beautiful as it does now. So thank you very much. Right, we now move on to our next agenda item, which is parking and transport. And we have Councillor Baldock, who is here on car park pricing, and I can probably answer things on other areas as well, I would imagine. And then we have Richard Moore, who's the presenting officer, and Richard has a presentation that he's going to make briefly on the report. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this is the annual sort of cycle of parking and transport scrutiny. I think probably last 12 months ago I came. This time I sat down with the chair and vice chair and agreed the data that this committee wanted to scrutinise. So that's hopefully all in this report tonight. I've only got 5 slides. I've picked out some of the pertinent data sets that I think might be quite interesting to have a bit of a discussion about. So I'll run through those and obviously I'll answer any questions after that. So in terms of, first of all, city centre parking, so we get accurate data from ANPR car parks. We can get data from the pay and display ones, but it's not so accurate. So in terms of a comparison, year-on-year comparison, we use ANPR data. And you'll see there on that first line, city centre car parking usage was down the April to March this year compared to last year by 7%. I've given what I think is a reasonable explanation in the report. 2 of our main car parks were closed for Luff. Castle Row car park was closed for the whole period of time. And Longport was closed for a few months over the summer period. That would have accounted for a lot of parking acts. Now we know that some acts were displaced, some of the Castle Row acts were displaced into Castle Street multi-storey. That was our plan all along. Longport, we accepted actually there's very little displacement. Some people may have gone to Holman's Meadow, but they're effectively just disappearing acts, if you like. I'm sure there'll be some other questions on that. Park and ride usage, very pleased to say that the trend has continued upwards, 12% up on the previous year. We have a notional target in the transport strategy for 10% per annum, but we've always accepted that that's never going to be linear. Usually it happens, you maybe get 2 or 3%, and then you might put in a bus lane or expand on the site, and then you'd get 20% increase. So to get 12% in a year that we haven't really done much, although the previous year we opened Stowe Road, that's very positive. And when you combine those 2 data sets for sort of parking acts into the city centre, there's a decrease of nearly 4%. Not particularly what you want to see, but I think all the time people are coming in, it's in line with the transport strategy, and I'll come to that in the next slide. Clearly, if parking acts were down and footfall was down and people weren't coming into the city by other means, then you would challenge me and say, hang on, your strategy is not working. But I'm confident that a bit of a blip in this year for car park usage due to Luff, but overall I'm pretty satisfied with the way that's looking. Whitstable, very similar to the previous year, up nearly 1%. And I think I've said many times at various committees that Whitstable and Herne Bay parking acts are very dependent on the weather. the 24, 25, so 25, 26 figure was definitely warmer than the previous year. So you'd expect a little bit of increase in Whitstable parking. And Herne Bay parking was down. And I think this has been influenced by one of probably the second biggest car park in Herne Bay, which is Market Street Car Park. There was two sides of it, and we only owned one side of it. And we had an agreement with the landowner probably 10, 15 years ago now, where we extended our car park whilst that person was waiting to get development. And so we've had the luxury of an increased capacity in Herne Bay for that period of time. That agreement ended, and that has had a direct impact on the amount of vehicles that managed to park in Herne Bay. Some other sort of relevant stats you may have picked up on the report. We measure dwell time, and although it's usually, I think I've said before, it's very, very similar every year we've done this. But actually, when you look at it, all of them are up a little bit. So that's pleasing to note. The resident rate that we brought in a few years ago, numbers this April compared to last April were up 34%. There has been a drop-off because we, as part of that permit, we do require people to annually renew, something that we're potentially looking at in the future. So there was a drop-off, but that increase is, I think, primarily due to the bottom factor that I'll come to a moment, where we encourage people to sign up. We have in our budget, some of you remember, a sum of £15,000, which we use for parking incentives and discounts. We use most of it for Christmas parking related discounts in all three, so Park and Ride in Canterbury and in Whitstable and Herne Bay. And the parking stats that I've shown in the report show that the usage did increase quite considerably due to those offers. Now, I say offers, it was actually free parking. Over various years, we've tried discounted periods, and 2 hours for the price of one. They've never resonated, and we've had very little success in actually attracting new customers. So this year we said, right, let's go with a free, much easier to market, and that's shown positively in the figures. And that bottom one, we got some last-minute funding through UK SPF, and we used that again for free parking to try and attract people into the Whitstable and Herne Bay following the Christmas period, which we know from retailers that's always the dead period for them. And again, the £7,000 that was used on free parking did have very positive impact on encouraging people to come into the car parks in those two towns. And wider look at transport mode shares, and this is for Canterbury, because obviously parking strategy is a key part of the overall transport aim to reduce people driving into the city centre. So the first data set we use is using Department for Transport traffic counters. And all 6 of the main A roads into the city have got counters on, and we've been monitoring them since 2000. Since 2000, flows have fallen by 12%. So this anecdotally, when you hear quite a lot of people saying traffic's just getting worse and worse every year. Those figures don't show that. It's actually gone down since 2000. I've put in brackets there, the trend is increasing slightly. So although we're lower than we were, and we've had some great success, we need to keep doing more to encourage a downward trend. I think anecdotally, if people think it's got worse, my perception is it's the amount of roadworks that are causing congestion. I haven't got figures to back that up at the moment. I'm sure we could get KCC on board at some point to demonstrate that. But the amount of roadworks particularly that have road closures or three-way traffic signals, are much greater than they used to be probably 10, 15 years ago. Rail data, obviously, one of the main things we want is people to travel by more sustainable means. So whether that's park and ride or bus or rail, they're both positive measures. I've just pulled out data for Canterbury East and West Station. So 24, 25, this is exits and arrivals, were 10% increase on the previous year. So that's very positive news. And bus data, it shows a 1% increase, but you're talking huge numbers there. So whereas I think rail is probably about 4 million people coming in on those two stations, bus journeys are sort of 15 to 20 million people coming into Canterbury. So yeah, 1% doesn't sound much, but it's huge numbers. And I think combining all those together, we're looking at footfall data, which is obviously the key metric for retailers, and that did show a slight increase on the previous year. So that's all, I think, positive news. And just a wider slide here I've put about the transport strategy, which is the draft strategy, obviously accompanying the local plan. I thought I'd just identify what I think are going to be our key priorities for the next 2 years. First one, which I've spoken about a few times, is the citywide hopper bus scheme. We've commissioned consultants to look at route options, and I've just got that report back, and we're looking at that at the moment. So within the next six months or so, I would be wanting to take a report through Cabinet to hopefully agree the next stage, which would be probably to do some more targeted consultation on the residents that we think might use these hopper buses. We're talking big money. So if we're talking hopper buses on either 1 or 2 loops, and we want it to be fast and frequent, you're talking, probably, and you want them to go both ways. You could do a clockwise or counterclockwise, but then you've got people waiting for a long time. So you want buses going both ways on those loops. So you're talking probably 6 buses. So it's quite big money. So we've got to be careful that we are confident that demand is there. I think the outputs were key. We're actually confident that some people will decide not to travel short distances in their car, and they'd rather just jump on and jump off a bus for flat rate fare. But we need to make sure the figures do stack up. Park and ride, spoken about quite a few times. Obviously, the impact of the A2 off slip. So over the next year or so, we're hoping to get a planning consent on the Kanenko site, and that will hopefully link up with then the off slip delivery. And then just a few of the really key cycle routes that we're currently working on. The Riverside cycle route, so the bit that goes from Asda to Vauxhall Road. Herne Bay to Canterbury, which is effectively an extension of that Riverside route that goes through the probably the new housing development at Broadoak, and then it goes sort of an off-road route through to Braggs Lane, if you know that, in Herne Bay, and then through into Greenhill. A route that comes in to Canterbury from Littlebourne, and then the big one in Whitstable is the extension of the Crab and Winkle line, which we're hoping to get. That's probably the one that's going to start first, either later this year or early next year. And that's the flat section that goes from Tenham Road Bridge into the harbour, and then you've just got we've got the issue of the 2 missing bridges that would complete that section. So hopefully, just a quick overview of the transport strategy there, and hopefully you found some of the data sets useful as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard, for that report. Does anyone? Yes, right, okay, I think I've got that. So it's Councillor Ricketts first, Councillor Mellish, Councillor Bland and Councillor Turnbull next. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Richard.
Yes.
No, I think, obviously a lot of this is for the reporting period where I was probably supposed to be sitting in a slightly different chair. So there are a couple of bits and bobs in there which I think, just to expand, I think it was really interesting to see the final results for those winter incentives, which I knew were going well at the time, and the effect that had on the residence rate. And I know it's always been an ambition to start doing those kind of things, and the UK SPF gave us that opportunity. But I think all about demonstrating behaviour change. But even I was really surprised at the effect that had in the uptake, and seeing actually where the uptake was. It was seeing that it was particularly popular in obviously Middlewall and William Street, and I think probably there's some clues there to some future actions to what we can start doing with those coastal sites that have perhaps been underperforming. And I think that it is difficult given the nature of the things that have affected the actual number of spaces available to draw conclusions from this. But I did have a question actually, which I hadn't occurred before, which is obviously these were due to the Levelling Up Fund works, and was that ever predicted as part of the funding that we got from LUF? And has there ever been a kind of, we certainly, if somebody uses our car parks for an event, we charge that back to them. Have we charged the LUF project back from the revenue account?
Yes, we have. So we obviously anticipate this at the outset. We know Castle Row is obviously the one that was closed for a year, and we worked out a percentage that we thought would displace, and that was pretty accurate, to be honest with you. And the actual loss that we calculated from that was then reimbursed through the LUF fund. It was 140,000. So yeah, no mean sum of money.
So Michael Gove's paid for it then in the long run. And the other point was, I think that we talked about some of those incentives. There was one other incentive which I think probably falls outside this period, but the free park and ride over Easter as part of the meningitis B recovery. It might be outside of the scope of this, but do we know how successful that was over that weekend?
I've got the figures. I'll be guessing if I could tell you what they were. They weren't significant, actually. So those some huge big increases in those other figures. I think it was in the region of 10% increase. So still not to be sniffed at, but not as high as I'd hoped.
Thank you, Councillor Ricketts. Councillor Mellish.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. No, Richard. 2 points, really. Do we have any way of analysing the footfall across the city? Because there's over 10% increase in people using rail coming off the railway stations, east and west, but only just over a 1% increase in footfall. My thought is, obviously, people are not using the rail to go visit in the town, but there are perhaps they're doing that. Why are they using the rail for? I suppose what's the footfall like? I have a second point, please, Chair.
So yeah, be careful you're not comparing percentages against percentages, because obviously 10% of 3 million rail is a lot less than 1% of hundreds of thousands of people who millions of people come into the city each year. There's various ways. The bid calculate it with they've got cameras, fixed cameras at various ends of the high street. Our economic development team have started using a company that uses mobile phone data, and so it's quite accurate. It's open source.
That's difficult in central Canterbury.
Yeah, probably. So yeah, we've only been doing it for 2 or 3 years now, but that's how we got that 1.2% increase based on mobile phone usage.
So, sorry, Chair. So that's really people using the shops, using the retail element of Canterbury.
I think it's tracking people's phones. It's
where they might be. Okay.
Big Brother.
Please, thank you. And the other part was about the hop on, hop off buses, which I know we've spoken about in the past in terms of Herne Bay. It kind of links up to the story around car parks in the Reculver car park, which doesn't. that 2% sort of dip is obviously due to the bad weather. One imagines you're not going to a national park with the weather like that. But this figure itself doesn't shift very much. It's the same numbers of people visiting there. And we've always argued in the past, certainly part of the Herne Bay Coastal Community team, that a hop-on, off-bus service to Reculver would actually increase more footfall into the area, make better use of the facilities there, and we can improve the facilities there. That would then link through to Wildwood, and the bus facilities at Wildwood are appalling, given sort of there's no lights, there's no footpath, etc. for the bus stops there, and then back onto Central Parade in terms of Herne Bay. And we have spoken to Stagecoach in the past, who said one of their most successful hop-on off routes has been in Ramsgate, and exactly the same sort of path, and that's been the most profitable for them. So we can see that actually operating in Herne Bay, perhaps only during the season, April through to September, October, but maybe have a thought about looking at it. I realise obviously you're going to test it out first within the town, it's the city itself, but have a think about and actually to start talking about whether that can be extended.
Just on that, there's a piece of work. I think you've all been involved with the town centre strategy work. Has everyone been involved with that? So yeah, lots of ideas have come for how do we make our towns and cities, revitalise and fit for the next 20 years or so. I'm pretty sure that idea is already in there for Whitstable and Herne Bay too. But obviously the focus for the transport strategy has been on Canterbury because that's where the congestion is mainly.
Yeah, an open top bus would be very good, like the one in Thanet. That's so popular, that bus route, and so many people go there just to go on the bus. It's quite incredible.
I also keep hearing land train mentioned, so
yeah, the land train. Right, well, so many hands went up all at once. I think it's Councillor Bland next, but don't get cross with me if I've got you slightly out of order.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel. Richard, and thanks very much for the report, which I have to say is, in my view, full of good news, actually, which is excellent in terms of being in line with our own strategy about where we wish to go. And the indicators are very positive. So I want to keep that kind of strategic view in mind. And I've got a question, really. I'm thinking clearly about Canterbury City car parks because, in a sense, that's where the big the modal shift is that we wish to achieve. So the figures seem to show that actually there's 7.41% drop in car park usage in Canterbury city car parks, really. Now, clearly, our strategy should increase that figure progressively over the years. Now, that's going to be a bit of a hit to the authority's income because we actually take quite a lot of income from that. So, looking forward to the point at which this authority is no more and merges into a unitary authority that will actually inherit this situation, do we have a strategy that has projections about how that continued decrease in car park income might go, with any ideas whatsoever about what might be there to replace it? Now, being a solid Labour councillor, I'm really interested in buses, and I'm particularly interested in publicly owned buses, which in certain areas have shown to be a massive success and a real foundation for economic growth and so on and so forth. Now, clearly this authority is too small to get anywhere near publicly owned buses, but a unitary authority might well be there. So the question is, are we looking ahead to the point at which we can squeeze these figures even further down, not to zero, nobody's talking about anything like zero, but significantly down to the place where we can seriously replace cars with a lot more buses, and preferably publicly owned ones. I'd welcome your thoughts on that.
It's an excellent question, and one I have been grappling with for many years with my transport strategy hat on. and then when I meet directors of finance, and they clearly got a different hat on. So I think as an authority, even the previous administration and the current administration, they've always accepted that the overriding factor from a transport strategy, we cannot allow just cars just to make the city congested. Not only is it bad for the environment, some businesses who think, oh, make it free parking, will soon be up in arms when no one's coming into the town or investing in the city because it's so congested. So I think the strategy to intercept vehicles on the outside of the city, as the park and ride strategy, is still sound, and it always has been sound. The hopper bus is a next stage where it's even more sustainable than park and ride, because you're not using the car for any part of your journey. And effectively, the city council, the new unitary, if they are funding that, would actually, although we wouldn't be, we would actually be funding it. So we're not running buses, but we are effectively commissioning buses. How we fund it is the question, and you're right. As we can charge, pretty significantly high hourly rate tariffs that people are still wanting to pay at the moment, and helping our revenue case. Whereas park and rides and hopper buses, they're never going to balance the books. Hopper buses maybe if after maybe 5 years of growth, but initially you're going to be effectively subsidising those services. How you pay for it is the key answer, key question. In the short term, you can sell off 1 or 2 car parks and get capital receipts and reinvest it. But of course, long-term revenue is the key, and that's where you actually want these the bus routes to be self-financing. So there's no easy answer, and you're right. It's something I've been grappling with. The current director of finance has been on my case for a couple of years, but I'm sure the new unitary directors of finances will be similarly questioning the role of parking income.
Thank you for that, and do continue grappling with it, because I accept that that is an issue, and the politicians have got to grapple with that as well. And I think we will find ways to deal with that.
Yeah, Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, thanks. I think it links back to the commitment we made with developing this transport strategy that we've got. I think, we were bold enough and brave enough, I think, to roll that into our local plan. And that is all part of what we've been talking about, really, is this shift, modal shift. Otherwise, we'd be building bypasses across acres. And it all struck me as slightly ironic that we were quite happy under the old sort of regimes to take millions and millions of pounds out of developers to build a bypass, but we weren't willing to take a significant amount of money out of the developers to help to run buses through SIL funding, for argument's sake. So, I think there has to be a political shift in what we spend our money on. And I hope that we're on that journey, but we're not at the end of it yet by a long chalk. And I think we'll be living that for the future. So I think it's a really hard, difficult set of questions to answer. But I'm not scared by that. We need to get there, I think, and that's the way that we need to work this through.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. And I think the past few iterations of the local plan have all been focused on the closure of city centre car parks and how do you make that work. So I think what Councillor Bland is asking is very pertinent. How do you balance those revenue streams? But yes, you can.
Just work quickly on that. Of course, this council is quite heavily indebted at the moment. So if we carry on paying the debt down, we've got slightly better situation at the moment. It's slowly going down, and that helps, of course, as well. So a lot of the money we use from car parks is, if you like, recycled in debt repayments. So that will help, but they're a long way off being paid down the debt. But at least it helps in that direction as well. Slow move again, I think.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Councillor Turnbull, I'll come to you, Councillor Prentice, in a little bit, and Campbell, but it's Councillor Turnbull first.
Thank you, Chair. So I've got a couple of questions about parking, and then I've got something about buses, so I might as well do it all in one go. Residence rates. Have you got any idea of what sort of percentage of eligible households are claiming residence rates? Because I see 4,800. I'm not sure that that's very high. And I wondered if you've got any figures on that. I've noticed a few times when I've been parked in Pound Lane, it's not been working. The gate hasn't been working, and I think in other car parks as well. And I just wonder what are the implications of that? How often is that happening? And does it mean that you don't capture revenue from people who are like myself who have an account, or does it mean that you still do? And what impact does that have? And because in terms of money and data that you're collecting there. And onto buses, it strikes me that Canterbury's got quite a lot of buses. And so you can imagine where I'm going with this one. We'd really love a hopper bus in Whitstable, or hopper buses in Whitstable. It would really help bring the town together. It could help connect the railway to the town, so we could get more people coming in by rail potentially. We've obviously got developments up on the Thanet Way, which are quite detached from the town. We've got the new bus gate in now, but no sign of a bus as yet. Whitstable's quite sort of long and thin, so it could help link in Sea Salterside and the Estuary View and all those different places and bring it all together. And it would be a lot cheaper than doing it in Canterbury. So maybe you'd like to consider that instead. Thank you.
Residence rate, I haven't got the actual figure. I can tell you it is pretty low, as you say. It's the numbers, the trend is upwards, but the number of residents who are the sign-up rate is different to usage. So a lot of people are signed up, but they don't use it that often. So obviously, if they're local, then they probably don't need to drive as much as people coming into the towns and cities. I'll dig out that figure for you then. When you see barriers that are broken, so they're either up in the air or broken, the cameras are still working. So anyone who's got an auto pay account is still being charged. Anyone who's paid at the machine before they leave is still being charged. So it's only you do potentially lose some people who wait to pay at the barrier, and they might decide just to leave. It's not as frequent as you might think. I won't go into the legalities just because it might encourage people to do it. But there's issues. We know when barriers come off, we do need to get onto them quite quickly. We've got more people joining our locality team. We're advertising for additional staff as well, which will help with that barrier replacement. And I don't. It's not a Canterbury or Herne Bay hopper bus thing. I don't think we should see it like that. It's for the local plan. It's focused on Canterbury because that's where the congestion is and the air quality is, and to get the transport strategy through the examination, it's one of the key bits of mitigation for that. Obviously, developments in Whitstable have to still show that they are sustainable in their own right. The park and bus scheme, which will go in on, I can't remember which development is, one of the ones on the old Thanet Way. There's a Section 106 commitment that they provide land for us to develop out and provide a park and bus, which will go through that bus gate you were talking about as well. So, but yes, going back to that, the town centre strategy aspirations, I'm pretty sure hopper bus for Whitstable is in there as well. So even if we don't deliver it under this administration, the new administration will have that as a strategy for them as well.
Thank you. And Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, Chair, I submitted a number of questions to Richard earlier in the week, which he came back and answered, and I thank him for that. And I won't go over those again, but there were a couple of additional questions and some follow-up questions, if I may. First of all, thank you for the presentation. Lots of good data in there. but I didn't see anything in there about number of cycle journeys to and from the city, or indeed district-wise. Is that something that we measure and we know how that's changed over time? Do you want to take them one at a time, or shall I just run through them all? All right. Okay. Number 2, same question, but totally different mode of transport. It's not public transport. It's lorries and haulage and freight and commercial vehicles. There's certainly a perception amongst a lot of Canterbury residents, I can't speak district-wise, but Canterbury city residents, the number of commercial vehicles has increased significantly for a number of reasons, destinations within the city. And again, is that something that we measure? And I appreciate we may be very limited about what we can do about that, but is it something that is that perception real or not? And then 2 follow-up questions from my written submission. I asked you, Richard, about the park and ride, which your projected figures show that we still, our expenditure on park and ride is still in excess of our income, and that's unlikely to change even with the growth we've seen. So my question, I guess, following up from that is, what is our current utilisation of the park and ride vehicles? What level of, what percentage are we capacity running at, and what opportunities are there to increase that? And is it worth spending some modest amounts of money on marketing, further marketing, signage, things like that, to try and drive that utilisation up at either all sites or specific sites? And you'll be glad to know my last question, again, follow up. I did ask you about the Jacobs report, which was produced in support of the transport strategy and the draft local plan, which concluded that even after mitigation of the delivery of the local plan, that again, it's Canterbury focused, there is about a half a dozen hotspots around the city, which even with mitigation would remain as hotspots. And the report recommended that we undertake some junction modelling to try and ease those hotspots. And it feels, I'm not a driver myself, but it feels that those hotspots are hotspots today, not just at the end of the local plan. And is it worth advancing that work and trying to smooth out those sites? So thank you for listening to all that.
So yeah, we're well spotted on the cycle data omission, and it's because we haven't got accurate data. I mean, the DFT counters that do measure difference between cars and freight, so we can get that. I haven't got it to hand, but I can get data on freight and HGVs to see if your feeling is correct on that increase. But they don't measure cycle data. Now, Spokes used to do it for us. They stopped about 10 years ago. So the only thing we can do is when we put in new cycle routes, we add counters. So we haven't done some for a long time, but we've got ones along Falala Way. For those of you who know, from the city, the old city council offices. There's a traffic pedestrian cycle counter there, and we've got some out on the coast as well. But I don't put them in data sets like this because they're so few and far between. It doesn't give an accurate picture on cycle usage. It is a shortfall, but we know in terms of a mode share, cycling is so small. I mean, we want it to grow, and we're doing everything we can in terms of infrastructure, cycle routes and cycle racks, cycle storage, barrel bikes, all those things. We want to encourage people to cycle. But when you're talking about congestion and the cycling plays in reducing journeys, it's quite small. So although we haven't got the data, it's not a significant emission in terms of an evidence base, particularly for the local plan. The Jacobs report is a significant piece of evidence that is needed for the for the local plan. Those works, as I suggested in my email, are underway and will be needed before we ever get to examination. So that will be happening. And yeah, park and ride and subsidy, and you're right. Sometimes we get close in terms of income from park and ride versus costs. we get close and then we go out to tender after 6 years or so, we go out to another tender and that gap grows again. And if we ever get electric buses, which we all want, that gap will grow even more. So although previous administrations have tried to link income to expenditure to make them self-funding, I think the current feeling, which I support, is that they are part of the overall supply, and the fact that city centre parking can subsidise a more sustainable form of transport is the right way to do it. My previous portfolio holder, who is sitting here, was very, very keen on marketing, and absolutely rightly so. There is still spare capacity on buses, and yeah, we need to do everything we can to encourage more and more people to use them. Having things like the 3 days for the Levelling Up Fund unlocking day were good, because we want to bring new people in to create those habits. I think when people have tried it once, most of them come back because they realize how easy and straightforward it is. So the marketing is there ideally to get new customers onto Park and My buses, and it's something we will continue to look at.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I just come back one thing about, I do take your point that the number of cycle journeys is small and probably wouldn't show up on the graph, but it is, it is a core part of our sustainable transport. And I'm just wondering if we can think about ways of doing some, I don't know, snapshot counts throughout the year, and just try and get an idea. Because if we do see a shift in the shift on the dial on that, I think that'd be good news. We can, sort of use that to encourage more people.
Yeah, I agree. As I was giving you the answer, it sounded a bit like an excuse, and I was thinking we actually need to do something. So yeah, I'll have to think about how we can do. Maybe twice a year. They have to manually count them. So yeah, going back old school.
Get some students. Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions, and I also want to say, great report. There's lots of good news in here, and it's well worth reading. On the hopper buses point, I'm really glad to hear there's a consultation sort of coming up in the not too distant future, and I'd be very interested in feeding into that. I get the point about funding, and I also appreciate the sentiments expressed by Councillor Bland as well, and that we may have an ideal, certainly on the Labour side, of having publicly owned buses, but quite a lot of systems in the big cities like London, Manchester are obviously privately contracted with an overall branding, and that's something we can be quite clever about, I think, in Canterbury. I think that the secret of the success of a hopper service, and I'm not just talking about Canterbury, but obviously Canterbury is the one that's closest to me, is where it does link, and bearing in mind that we don't have rail links linking east and west. You have to physically walk between east and west stations. Making new journey opportunities is actually a real opportunity, a really important opportunity for people who think that it's actually hard to get from one side of Kent to the other, but if there's a convenient bus between the two, linking those stations is really important, as well as obviously the retail areas and the hospital maybe. I'm just thinking of the most useful destinations. On the coast, I see no reason why we can't have those sorts of services, but I don't know why it necessarily can't be run commercially. I think I sense a lack of imagination in our local bus operators in opening new services and setting up new routes where, as we know, there are more and more new homes, and there is obviously a need to connect them all up with the services, the retail, the jobs that people need. And I suppose that sort of leads into my point that subsidy is not irrelevant. It is relevant, and I totally get the point about not having this bottomless pot of money from the finance director for subsidising public transport. But public transport is about linking people it's about what it does, and not necessarily about washing its face sort of straight away. It's about linking people with the jobs, the homes, the schools, the opportunities that people need to live their life and not rely on the private car. And also just to add to that, I noticed in the latest round of service changes, Stagecoach have made cuts to the number 5 route again. So that's another concern where we're seeing cutbacks on the commercial side. We need to do something to fill those gaps, because otherwise people will be trapped more and more in car dependency. So I don't think subsidy is a dirty word. I think it's actually really important. And I don't think it's just about profit and loss. Final few bits on cycles. I'm really glad Councillor Campbell mentioned that, because obviously we won't have data for the barrel bikes yet, and I'm really impressed by that scheme. I think it's really good for Canterbury. And I'm guessing in about a year's time we'll have some meaningful data on that, but I don't know if that data can be shared. I hope it is shared, because obviously Beryl's a private provider, isn't it? So it'd be really, really good to see what sort of usage there has been and how people are using it, where people are using it. I suspect the university route, if you like, is one of the most popular ones, but anything up the hill in Canterbury with an electric assisted bike is going to be a bit popular, I guess. So well done on that. Fantastic. Really good to have that in place as part of I think it was part of the levelling up funding, wasn't it? So really good that we managed to get that over the line. Yeah, they were my bits. Thank you very much.
Just briefly on barrel bikes, yes, we are getting the data through, and they obviously, they're operating it, the revenue goes to them. They are very pleased with the uptake. I think even after about a month, each bike was being used on average 5 times. So it was much better than they'd expected on their business case. University is a bit of a problem at the moment. We haven't got cycle racks. We haven't been able to get permission yet for cycle racks at the university. We're working on it very hard. So students are cycling. I think there's some at Hales Place, and people are leaving them there and walking the rest of the way. So we need to. It's on our target to get permission to extend up to the university.
Councillor Baldock.
I was going to just emphasise the point. I think barrel bikes are looking for more locations, aren't they? More drop-offs. You look at the map and you see there's actually really a long distances between some of the drop-off points as well. So if any of you can help in any of those directions and you think there's some conversations going on, then I think they're open to that as well. So really, really good point. And I think the other bit I just put with what Paul was saying about sort of the subsidy on like park and ride buses, particularly. I think you have to be committed and have that confidence that you're doing the right thing, and let people come along with you. And it's not like saying, "Oh, suddenly we've run this for like 3 years now." Under Alex started that off. That idea of homogenising the cost, and now we're starting to see that shift coming through. So you have to have confidence in the long term as well, and I think that's something that it's no good always worrying about tomorrow. You've got to think forward and go for several times more distance in time. Hopefully there'll be enough modal shifts from park and ride to make a difference to the transport strategy. The buses will help, the hopper buses will help, and so on and so forth. It's not just one thing, it's the whole lot.
Councillor Campbell, did you want to come in very quickly?
Yeah, it's just in response to Councillor Baldock about the bevel bikes. You're saying more sites. Is that expanding or outside of the current footprint, or is that more sites within the existing footprint?
I guess it's fair to say it's inside the footprint to start with, but I think they are very keen, aren't they? They've had a really good time there, I think so. Yeah, pick up.
They are keen, but they're a commercial business. They need to make it work for them. I think we wanted to establish first within sort of the core before we started looking outside of that. Their model is based on, in all the towns and cities they do it, their model is based on very short and quick journeys, lots of turnover of bikes. I'm trying to get them to look at a a different model that would meet more of a tourist market. So someone can actually have that bike for a day, and there'll be a reasonable tariff for them to do that. They haven't got that tariff in yet. We see potential for people to pick up a bike in Canterbury and go to Whitstable for the day and then come back. They're slightly reluctant because, as you say, then their bike turnover is 1 basically, and they won't repeat. So they need a bit of persuading, and I think over the next 6 to 9 months or so, when we get more data and we see how many bikes they've got in circulation, we can encourage them to increase the number of bikes. With that, you'd want to increase the number of sites as well, because you don't want them all to be in the same area. So yeah, it's early days, and I think I'll certainly add it to, in future ones of these, I'll add Beryl Bikes data. So I think we'll find that pretty useful. But I say, in the meantime, if you've got any concerns, let me know. We've got a good working relationship with them. The problems with the antisocial behaviour haven't gone away totally, but they have certainly died down. So we were confident that they were confident that they would. So that's good. But yeah, I think it's a positive story. We haven't widely promoted it yet because it's still early days. But yeah.
Councillor Ricketts, yeah, very quickly, and then I'll...
Yeah, it's a very quick one on barrel bikes. Is I happen to know that they do normally operate quite small areas, but there is one area they operate where there's a sort of a very long, thin extension to it, and that's in Hereford. And that very long extension goes to a certain place in Hereford where it was requested, and it was requested by the SAS apparently. And you tend to do what they say, really, don't you? But I don't see any reason why Whitstable and the SAS shouldn't get the same treatment, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. And before I move on to Councillor Mackenzie, I wanted to ask Richard about Park and Ride and the hopper buses, because I think one of the things over the years we've all commented on is the fact that Park and Ride is quite limited service, not only because of the lack of the access in for the buses, but also because they just go to the bus station and back. And that if that was opened up longer hours and had feeder services to the trains and to the hospital, that this would make a big difference to usage. Is there any way with the hopper bus that could be worked into the Park and Ride contract so that the costs are sort of or balanced in some way? Is there some way that could now be feasible? And the other thing I just wanted to ask is the change in the buses last year to the smaller bus at Surrey Road. Can you tell us as well how that has made a difference to the service?
Yeah, so we've commissioned this report, and one of the things we've asked them to look at is different route options. So yeah, all the obvious sites, East West Station, Hospital, University, to look at those. We've also asked them to look at using the Park and Ride sites as effectively interchange points, is the point you're making. So that will all be covered in the report to see how feasible it is in terms of sort of route configuration, and also in terms of costs. So that is something will be considered. I knew I'd forget the second question.
The smaller buses that were...
So my one reservation when I was probably here, and I was worried not so much about capacity, because I thought there would, and there is capacity. There's maybe a few times on on the 7:30 bus that leaves Surrey, it can be quite busy. But capacity is not a problem. But I was concerned that extra, 5, 6, 7 minute delay might put people off. Absolutely hasn't shown that to be the case, and I've had no complaints at all from people saying I've had to wait a bit longer than I used to. This is a problem. So I think it has been successful.
So there's an indication there that a smaller bus doing a longer route might be a better option, and then that would fit with the whole hopper bus anyway. Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask about the bus shelters, because we got that really positive news recently about the funding from KCC, and many of us here have got bus shelters in our wards that are getting fixed, and it's really good news. I was just wondering if perhaps you could report back to us on that in the next transport scrutiny. Just let us know how those bus shelter improvements and installations are going, because I'd be very interested to know. And also, I mean, general repairs as well, because I mean, I know in my ward there's lots of bus stops that weren't included in that funding for installations, but they were broken and in need of repair. So, in terms of just general repairs, like, can we have reporting back on how well we're doing with identifying and repairing broken bus shelters? I was also going to ask about park and ride sites. So, I've had complaints over the last 3 years about the Story Road Park and Ride at times where maybe the weeds have been overgrown or the pavement has been uneven, icy, lights haven't been working and they felt unsafe, particularly for a woman who contacted me who felt unsafe by herself because of the lighting not working, the barriers not working. So all of these issues were resolved, and I know I worked with Councillor Baldock to get many of these things sorted at one point 'cause it's in his ward. I was just wondering, because like people are going to feel more comfortable, using the service and leaving their cars there and being physically there themselves, if it's well maintained and if it's safe and well lit. So I know this is probably like a multi-department thing. It's not just transport; it will also be contracts and all that. But like, is this something that we can work on to make sure that we're keeping on top of this and having a report back on that to make sure that people are feeling safe in our park and ride sites and safe using them?
Yeah, absolutely. All absolutely valid points made. We had picked up over the last 2 or 3 years that our car parks, not just park and rides, but all our car parks were not being maintained as they should, particularly weed growth at spring times. We've addressed that through our a star chamber bid, but I bid for money and say, look, I need resource here to make sure our car parks are appropriate for their use, and I was successful in getting some money for an additional Canenco crew who are dedicated to car parks, and they started in April. And so for this financial year, you should see some improvements in terms of how the car parks look, both in terms of vegetation, litter clearance. Faults, we do a monthly inspection. So one of the other teams does a monthly inspection, all our car parks, and they should list, we know barrier repairs on a daily basis because they're flagged, but things like lighting being out should be reported on a monthly basis. Sometimes they can take a long time to get, if it's a network fault and not just a bulb out, it can take ages to get these things repaired. The point I'm trying to make is, if any councillors, I don't know on this committee, but any of your colleagues notice any of these things, let us know. There used to be on the website a fault reporting form for bus shelters. I think that's gone now. So just let Ruth know, Ruth Gowdy and my team know, and we will action those. And yes, as part of the reporting next time, or before, because the bus tender, when it goes, the bus shelter tender, when it goes out, I will want to report back to all councillors anyway on which supplier we're using, what type of shelters we're using, and obviously which sites are going to go in. So yeah, we won't have to wait to the next cycle for this. I'll do something as soon as I've got the information.
Thank you. And Councillor Paget, and then I'll come back round.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to pick up on the car parking, I think many people have raised things on this already, but just to highlight that clearly from the data we can see that those free parking days, particularly in Herne Bay and in Whitstable as well, did obviously have an impact on bringing people into the centre. We know our local shops and businesses are still struggling, and there's more that we need to do there. So I just wanted to sort of really raise that, looking at a more longer term plan in terms of introducing these, so that that's a more sustainable sort of drive in increasing footfall into Herne Bay in particular, and also Whitstable, would be very welcome. And I think obviously having like the free parking on a Wednesday, for example, was great and was welcome, but it would be good to look at where the most impact can be made in terms of people coming into Herne Bay. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of put that point forward.
Yeah, and just to reassure people, we've got that same sum in the budget for this year, £15,000. We don't have to use it all at Christmas. I mean, Christmas to some extent sells itself. So we might want to, if the January to March period has been helpful to businesses, we might want to focus some of that money on there. What I usually do is sit down with, I've got two portfolio holders now, but I'll sit down with them, and obviously they can talk to colleagues as well, and we can think about a plan. And then we usually consult in Canterbury. We consult with the bid. There are business groups in Herne Bay and Whitstable we tend to consult with as well. There's no point in doing it if they're not on board. So yeah, we were reassured. No, we're very pleased by the results. So yeah, I think it's something we should do again in the future.
I think one thing that's we talked about when Alex was in the chair as well, but is that sort of interlink between the residence rates and discounting, and that's something that we know it's actually quite a low number of people signed up for residence rates, isn't it? How would that work? How would it be incentivized to more people to sign up if it was cheaper parking for residents? Is it residents that want the discounts in the centres, or did they just want free parking and they never would pay anyway? I think those sort of questions that we're trying to work through. So any help that you get from feedback would be useful, I think. And so, yeah, and that it makes the discounting go a lot further as well. You think about it. So it's helpful. I think we're willing to talk about that as well. So certainly.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think businesses definitely welcome any support they can get in Herne Bay, Richard. So that Wednesday did work, but there may be other days of the week that would be more suitable and other times. But thank you. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard. Richard, I'd like to give you some money. Would you like £783,997.72 to start a hopper bus service? Because Kent County Council have been sitting on that money. They've got it from the Saxon Field developments, and they've said that it's not enough for Stagecoach to run a bus service with because costs have gone up. And instead they want to wait until they get more money coming from another development that hasn't even really started yet. Have you spoken to KCC about that? Because I would think that £750,000 would enable you to work with a bus provider, be it Stagecoach or another, to run a hopper service from Bannington through Wincheap and into the city, dropping off at the bus stations, and it would sort all our problems out. If you could give them a call in the morning and sort that out, that would be fantastic. So can I? Yeah, I'll let you come back to me whether you've had any of those discussions. If not, can you get on and have those? And secondly, have you got any more timescales on either the Wincheap Slip Road or the Wincheap Gyratory?
We talked to KCC Public Transport quite a lot. They were part of the stakeholder group when we did the bus strategy, and they knew the bus hopper bus would be one of our priorities, along with Stowe Road bus lane. They haven't mentioned that there's a pot of money that would go towards it. Yeah, if it's still sitting there at the time we're going to commission ours, then it may be that it forms part of that route. So yeah. I mean, I know you said it in a joking way, but it's worth looking at. So I will take that forward. The timescale for off slip hasn't changed since I last reported it, which was looking at they want to be on site January 2029. So we need to have our Canenco site open December 2028. So we need to start that a year before that. So that's what we're working to in terms of our timescale. So it all ties in, because clearly we wouldn't let them start the off slip until we've got a replacement park and ride. and as landholder, we can stop them. So our timetable is, and it's not holding them back because they still need to get their detailed design, so that those timetables do coincide. Gyratory, last I heard was that it's still part of the final knockings of the Section 278 agreement, which is the agreement between the developer and KCC to get their technical designs approved. That's nearly happened. When that's happened, then they need to reconsult on the parking changes. So there's a TRO process that needs to happen. I haven't got a title. We're talking months rather than years for that. So yeah, the first you probably hear about it, unless you've got other sources at KCC Development Control, is the TRO will be advertised for the parking changes. And I think there's a number of other road closures as well that were part of that probably need to be reconsulted with because of the time lapse now.
Can I come back, Rachel? Thank you, Richard. You said if that pot of money's still there, do we have to wait? Can we have those conversations now and start hopper bus services as soon as we can, rather than sort of waiting for a few more years?
Listen, it sounds a lot of money. I am not surprised that Stagecoach are saying they can't operate at that, because I know some of their costs, and I know indicative costs that we've had back from our consultants on what the cost of the hopper bus would be, and they are significant. So this would help, but it's not going to suddenly say, yeah, I can run a bus tomorrow, because it just wouldn't happen. There's a process, as you know, we need to go through. At the moment, it's in a SIL list. We have got no authority to spend on any scheme at the moment. So that's another piece of work that our local plans team needs to do shortly, to take that SIL priority list through. I'm hopeful that hopper bus will come out very high, and then I can start spending some SIL money. I'm hoping before that I get approval to go out to consult to see if that demand is there. So I've got a lot of process to go through before the council can say, yes, proceed with a hopper bus. So yeah, even if the money was there, I haven't got the authority to do that.
Yeah, I'm just going to push you if I can, Richard. Could you just have that conversation?
Yeah, would. Yeah, absolutely will.
And just to see, because it is sitting there in a pot. Developers have paid it over, and it's not doing anything. It would be a shame if it just sits there for years, because it doesn't need to be, a fully blown service. It could be, just improving what's there at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely will. I'll have a chat with them, see what the conditions are, see where the obviously it's linked to a development, so it needs to be compliant with that Section 106.
And I also don't think it's the only 106 pot that's sitting there for developments. I think probably quite a few of us have got pots of money for buses that are just not happening, that could be amalgamated or used with other services. So it is a frustration, yeah. Councillor Forrester, with you at last.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, this is my first go, so. So most people have taken most of my points, so thanks. But firstly, I'll start with Councillor Sol first. I completely agree that would be a great use of that money. I hope it's something that we can consider on the SIL committee at some point, of use of money for projects like this. And I think it is, probably needs a bit more, but is a significant amount of money. And for that amount of money, I can get you 2 brand new route masters. Or up to 3 single deckers, all electric, I should add. So I don't know how Stagecoach are doing their maths, but 2 route masters aren't insignificant. And obviously you want to add some wraps and stuff to make them look Canterbury. But anyway, so then staying on buses, I want to say how positive the bus shelter project was, as Councillor Mackenzie said. And you talked about the procurement, and I was going to just say, can we be really ambitious in what we go for there? Can we look at, pollinator roofs or solar panelled roofs, so that then information can be provided on the bus shelters? That not only goes to kind of comfort for passengers waiting, but also information, which then feeds into the other point Councillor Mackenzie said about safety, which loops back round to the hopper bus of, if we're looking at things like this, I think safety of travel, particularly at night and particularly for women, is crucial. You know, that's when I speak to my peers, that's one of the key drivers of why people drive, because walking back late at night, buses are less frequent, probably don't even go where you live if you're beyond Morrison's in Canterbury. Certainly, you know, if you're trying to get to Herne Bay and Whitstable late at night, you could be waiting ages. So I think kind of all of those factors, we can think about those in the procurement and be really ambitious in what we're asking for. So we're not just increasing the buses, but increasing the range of users at different times of day. Picking up Councillor Turnbull's point about barriers, I think your point was where barriers are up and so you can just drive through. But I wanted to talk about the opposite, which I've noted at the Station Road West multi-storey multiple times, which is where the barriers on entry are permanently down. And if that's a known fault, I've noticed it when I commute in the mornings, people have complained about it, and how that is noted, how it affects income if if it's repeated as frequently as it seems to be, and what can be done about that. On buses, just to echo what everyone said, I think we can be more ambitious. I think Stagecoach can definitely be more ambitious. We've talked about London, who obviously had the super loop. I'd love a mini loop in Canterbury, Whitstable and Herne Bay. Or, you know, I think it'll be super as well, but there might be branding issues. But I think, you know, you don't need to be massive. You don't need to be London or Manchester to do this. Reading Borough Council run their own bus service, have done for over 100 years. And one of the ways they fund that is by doing the deregulated, what are called long distance services. Deregulated under the 1980 Transport Act. And long distance just means the stops are 15 miles apart. That means you could have a stop Margate, Canterbury, Ashford. That is your long distance service. That gets kids to college and stuff, and gets you a bus service from Canterbury to Ashford in the early morning, which at the moment doesn't exist. And then very lastly, you'll be pleased to know, you talked about increased dwell times in car parks. Now, I understand how that can be tracked for ANPR, but for the non-ANPR car parks, I want to know how that is tracked and how accurate that is. Because when you try and pay with Ringo, it asks you to choose your hours and minutes, but the charging is only in hours. So if I stay for an hour and 10 minutes, I am paying for 2 hours. And therefore, if we're tracking dwell time by what I pay, that's not necessarily accurate. It might be to our advantage in terms of income stream, but we're not getting a correct reflection of how people are using those car parks. Thank you.
So that last one first, and it's an easy one to answer. It's not necessarily the answer you want, but the dwell time is only ANPR because it's accurate and it's measurable, and so we can look at trends. Yeah, I'm going in reverse order. The hopper bus is I think it's going to be a great, hopefully successful experiment. I mean, it will be an experiment for us because the City Council have never done anything like this before. And I think we are ambitious enough. And if we can make it stack up in terms of the finances, then I think it's something we're all very supportive of. You said Station Road West barriers, when they're down, as you approach them, they'll always be down. Do you mean they stay down?
Yeah, so it's a repeat issue that there's two barriers on entry,
Yeah.
and they are often both down and on entry, and I've seen it on multiple occasions where neither will lift. So
Okay.
and on multiple occasions where one is working but the other is not. Sometimes there is a cone placed at the entry point. Sometimes
Yeah, okay.
the cone is moved, and I don't know if it's moved because it's meant to be working and it's not, or it's moved because
Yeah,
someone else
I'll
has
look
moved
into
it.
that. I'll look into that. It sounds like it's a camera fault because obviously it's the cameras that pick you up, and then they should talk to the barrier. Hopefully, we're not losing money, but then because people would have to, instead of pressing the help button, people are reversing up or then going somewhere else.
So I've been in a situation myself. This is purely anecdotal, where I've pressed the button and just been told, "Oh, we'll get someone to come out."
But
But
they let you in. They open it.
no. But the cat barrier can't be lifted. So my concern is you've got a high number of commuters then, kind of arriving early morning.
Yeah.
If they're anything like me, with very little time
Yeah,
between
no,
when they
that's
arrive
right.
and get the train, to get through, find a parking space,
Okay.
and also they're high revenue parking
yeah.
users.
Okay, I'll look at that. I wasn't aware of that, but I will look at it. And then your first and my final response was about the bus shelters. We are definitely looking at solar panelled, and we've asked to look at living roofs, pollinator roofs, just so we can see what designs suppliers can come up with, and then we can obviously balance cost versus those important bits. When you talk about safety as well, you're talking about illuminating within the shelter, aren't you? So
Illuminations, cameras,
Yeah.
having solar power allows you to have all
security
these
measures.
options
Yeah.
included, and then people know how long they're waiting, and a camera
Yep.
hopefully deters any antisocial behaviour.
We'll get costs and options for those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forrester. There is something weird with a camera at Station Road West, because often when you go out, it won't recognise how long you've been there or your number plate, so you can just put any random time in. Yes, that happens occasionally. Well, it doesn't happen it's not all the time, but I suppose if you look at it tomorrow, you can stop it.
It happens enough that I hear about it on my commute fairly frequently.
Thank you. Right, I come to Councillor Turnbull now. Thank you for your patience. And then Councillor Harvey, who's been giving way actually to people. So thank you, Councillor Harvey. So Councillor Turnbull first, come to Councillor Harvey, and then Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Harvey, for giving way. So a couple of things. One I meant to ask earlier was why there's no financial figures allocated to codes for some of the Whitstable car parks. So you've got, what is it, Beach Walk, Oyster and Whitstable Harbour. So there's no financial information for those. So I was just curious as to why that is. I'm sure that's a simple one.
Yeah, it goes into the harbour pot. It's not a general fund.
Comes to the Harbour Board. Okay, good. That's good. Also, yes, there's definitely some still money for Whitstable Heights for a bus there. And I think when I remember some meetings a few years ago with other councillors and with Stagecoach, where there seemed to be this sort of consensus that there was enough money to provide a little hopper service. This is when Estuary View was not being served by buses. So anything you can find out about that would be more than welcome. And finally, picking up on what Councillor Mackenzie was asking about with the Park and Ride, you used to do customer surveys on Park and Ride, certainly in the early days of reinstating Surrey Road, but I think all the Park and Rides. And I wondered if you were still doing those, because I know certainly when I used to use the Surrey Road one a few years ago, when I was studying at Christchurch, so I'd leave the car there for the day while I was in college. It was it did feel a bit I did feel a bit uncomfortable sometimes coming back there as a woman on my own. It can be quite a lonely place. So anyway, so I just wondered if there was any if you're still collecting any data like that.
We haven't done for a while. One of the questions we do ask is the barriers to stop you using it, and I must admit, safety and security doesn't usually feature very highly, but obviously it might be that people don't use it because of that, and so we're not actually getting to the right people. Yeah, I think I'm trying to think when a good time to do it is. Usually when we're making policy changes, we want that evidence, but yeah, perhaps we should be doing them on an annual basis anyway. I'll have a think about that to see if we can, and then again, it's something I can bring to the next report.
Yeah, it's interesting to find out who's parking, where they're coming from, isn't it? So, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah. So just touching on what Grace has said, and I think you did as well, Tom. Hernbow and William Street, overall, they're not particularly doing great with their businesses. There's a lot of problems down there. And we know from what the businesses have spoke to us that we did benefit from the residents' parking rates. And we need more like this if possible. And I don't know how to get more people signed up, but I think we do need more people like this, more efforts like this. And you can see from the figures the car park is not being used as much. Is there any of the incentive fund we can use? As I know this was touched on earlier by Alan, but Wednesday the free parking we've said was really good, but the weekend would be awesome because we do need to get people in at the weekend, and we need to get it advertised out there that not just in Herne Bay, but the marketing needs to be out for everywhere. Because as you say, if it's not the local residents using it, then we need to attract others. And I know we want to raise funds from the car parks for our coffers, but we've got to think about the economic situation with the businesses. You know, why are people leaving? Why are the shops getting so empty in Herne Bay? What's going on? So as you said, it will be, but we'd appreciate if the fees could be looked at the budget to see if there is any money to maybe do a few weekends free, even if it was a Saturday here or a Sunday there. Especially, I mean, during the summer it's going to be busy anyway, but off them off peaks, we really need to get people in. Otherwise, it would just end up as a little dead end town, which we don't want.
I think when the annual tariff setting process, the OSPO, which many of you get involved with, if 1 year William Street's down, I'm not too worried because it could be a number of factors. If that trend continues, then that's a point where you'd want to do some intervention in terms of the hourly rate pricing, and those are the sort of discussions that I have with portfolio holders. This year we've dropped one of the car parks in Baculver, so one of the car parks went down from a band 2 to a band 3. So it'd be interesting to see the data on that to see if that's had any impact on where people are parking too. So it's that sort of evidence that we use when we sit down and have those conversations about tariff setting. So we'll do that. And the 15,000 that we've got as a budget for incentives, it may be that we can increase that if we think that these temporary interventions are beneficial. Then we could look to increase that that pot of money too. So a number of things we can do, but the points about Herne Bay are well made.
I work with 3 different dog walkers, and when the prices went up at Reculver, every single one of them said, we're not going to Reculver anymore, because they was all going, each dog walker was going 3 times a day. I mean, these people have like 6 to 8 dogs each a day. And I was trying to work out the revenue for that the other day, and I just sort of gave up on it. But they were doing this 5, 6 days a week. That's just 3 lots of people who decided not to go because the prices were put up. I know they've come down again, but I think a little bit of foresight and thinking ahead of the ramifications of not just residents, but businesses as well that are using those car parks, whether they're dog walkers or nannies taking children out, whatever. It's really important, because I thought to myself, blimey hell, that's just 3 people doing it 3 times a day. That's 9 customers not using it a day. You know, and as we've said before, obviously, Reculver isn't a drive-through, it is a destination. So we need to try and get people there to pay longer, to stay there longer. And so, you know, whatever we can do will help for all these areas. Yeah, thank you.
We have got up in Herne Bay very good dog walking car parks. The leisure car parks, Bishopston Lane, Reculver Drive, those car parks are ideally suited for dog walkers. They're on the leisure tariff. You get a park for a day rate, but you can also get a season ticket. So if I'm a business owner walking dogs, that's what I would do. I wouldn't be paying the hourly rate tariff at one of the 2 Reculver car parks. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prentice.
Thank you. Quick point on the residence rate, which from all I can see is popular and is used, but I wonder if there's been a bit of a natural drop off I think the figure of 4,000 was quoted earlier. And I suspect that there's a lot of people maybe who are quite close to car parks in the city centre don't need to use that anyway. But those people in the villages might make more use of it because they're just further out, obviously. So I think a marketing push on that would be worth doing again, and at relatively low cost. On residents parking in the city centre, I think it would be worth looking at that again. It'd be worth looking also at the maintenance of some of those car parks, because I'm aware that a lot of the, say, the band one car parks have had like resurfacing. They've had the benefit of the levelling up funding, and they look amazing actually. But some of them, and declaration of interest, I do have a permit in one of them, but they don't always have the much spent on them in terms of maintenance. Now, sometimes sometimes I suppose the question is asked, well, is it all city council land, or is that bit of brick wall there, owned by KCC because it's next to a footpath, and the brick wall's falling apart and looking quite, it's not terrible, but it's not, it's not looking like it's been particularly well looked after. And I think because we have, obviously we've needed to put up prices generally in recent years, that it's not always been matched by sort of capital expenditure on maintaining those residents' car parks. I think a little bit of investment for next year's budget round would be worth looking at. Yeah, I think those are my points. Thank you.
Could you give me an example? Could you send me some examples?
Griffin Lane, Tower Way.
Yeah, those ones.
I mean, quite close to here actually, and probably North Lane. Some of the ones in the city centre which might have been a bit overlooked and probably are due a little bit of investment.
Yeah.
But I can provide you with a list.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Prentice. Has everyone asked the questions and made the points they wish to make? Great. So I would like to thank everyone for a very in-depth, good debate this evening on transport issues, and thank Richard for being here, and also Councillor Baldock for being here. So I think there are a lot of points there. I'm not going to try and recap them all because I think every single person has pretty much spoken at least once, and they had a number of points they've made. So it's going to then take me another 10 minutes to recap them. So I think between Andrea, Marie and Richard, you've noted those all down. So we'll hear back, and also they will come to our next transport meeting in a year's time. But meanwhile, there are other things coming through, like the hopper buses and the bus stops and various other things that we've heard about. So can we note that report? Are we all happy to note it? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. So the item 8, very quick one. We've got the note of the next planned topics, if everyone's happy with those. The Community Safety Partnership report is at our next meeting on the 24th of June. So we've already had a briefing on that, and it looks like it's going to be a very full, in-depth report with a lot of information about what the council is doing, not necessarily focusing on some of the antisocial behaviour issues that dominated, say, last year, but looking at some of the issues affecting our rural communities, and focusing on fly tipping and a whole range of other areas that are really affecting our communities, and what the council is doing together with the community CSP to work on those. So I hope that will be of interest. But if anyone has got anything that they really would like to see included in that, can you let me know ASAP, because then we can try and get something into that report or bring it through that evening. Otherwise, there's no other urgent business. We don't need to exclude anybody. So I would like to thank you all very much, and I'll see you on June 24th. Thank you.